Well, good morning and welcome to CityLine. It is wonderful to be in your home. Today is Thursday, January 24th, and as you know, we are live every Thursday morning. Later on in the hour, we'll be talking with Tacoma Opera. And then, of course, we have a segment that's dedicated to temporary shelter. Excuse me. And during this time of year, we do see a lot of people who are out there in the cold and rain. So we have some individuals that will talk about this. And then Recycling Revamp is here to talk about the recycling in Tacoma as I have a sip. Hang on. There we go. And what are some of the changes that are going to be happening and how you can be a part of that? And then with me right now, I have a fabulous individual who is here to talk about the residential parking permit that's happening here in Tacoma. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Lindahl. Hello, Rachel Lindahl.
Hi.
Welcome to CityLine, my dear, and the big comfy couch. You are the residential parking program manager for this segment, aren't you? We have a lot to get into.
Oh, yes, we do.
I was telling you, excuse me, I'm just kind of still getting over that cold that everybody has for, 3 months. That my background in living in an area that's densely populated, that is parking controlled, was Capitol Hill. I lived up there cumulative 5-7 years, and we always were so appreciative and also so relieved that there was a residential parking program. So let's talk about what's going to happen here in Tacoma. So for Tacoma, what is the residential parking program?
Well, the residential parking program is a new tool that we have in the city, and this is a way for residents to get some priority to find a parking stall in the on-street system within close proximity to their home. These are areas that can be designated as a residential parking zone, kind of like the residential parking districts in Seattle. And typically, these areas that would need a tool like that are ones where you're having a lot of density. So like residential areas that surround hospitals, schools, large office buildings, basically those kind of big parking generators where there's a competing need for those parking spaces.
Yeah, boy, and absolutely. And I see that more and more now in Tacoma. I told you I've been here now for 24 years, and the parking that it was 24 years ago is not the parking outside our studios today. So tell us, how does the program work?
Well, really the gist of it is, as I stated, is that areas can become residential parking zones. What you would see with your feet on the ground are signs posted that would read 2 hours or by permit.
Branding, yeah.
Yes, yes. And how that system would work is that individuals who have a car that would like to park on street would need a permit to park and exceed those time limitations. But with that short-term provision built into there, the 2 hour, anybody can use that space for up to 2 hours without needing a permit, but then they would have to move outside of that residential parking zone once that time has maxed.
Wow. So what time of day would these restrictions, the 2 hour, apply?
Well, the restrictions can certainly take a little tweaking over time because parking needs to be supportive of what those adjacent land uses are and the neighborhood needs. But our default start time when we do implement a new residential parking zone is we start with restrictions Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then, of course, once we've been living and breathing in that system for a while and enforcing it for a few months, we can certainly adjust those restrictions to figure out, okay, is this parking management, is this working for the neighborhood? Because some areas absolutely behave differently than others, like around hospitals and schools. So it can take a little tweaking over time to figure out what's the best way to manage the parking dynamics in a neighborhood, but we have that default start time to kick off with.
That's nice because, as we drive around our city and I see a lot of the mixed use high rises going up, and I think that would be a prime example of where a restriction may have to be tweaked a bit because if you get a permit and that building is not done yet, and then a year later it's done, you have dramatically changed the parking by the occupancy of that mixed-use building. So I'm glad to see that there's some looking at and some tweaking, because we want people to come live in Tacoma, and we want to be able to ebb and flow with the traffic as well. So how much does the permit cost?
Well, the rates do differ per the different permit types. Of course, there are two different options for permits for this program. One is a 24-hour guest pass that can be available at the price of $1. The other one is the annual permits.
Okay.
And those are on increasing scale. So just like the graphic outlines, so for your first vehicle and your second vehicle, those are $60 each annually, but then that price increases by $60 for each vehicle that you want to have a permit for tied to your residence. So for your scenario, if you are someone that has 4 cars that you absolutely wanted to park on the street, you didn't want to use a driveway or an off-street parking resource, the pricing system that you would face is $60 for your first car, $60 for your second, then your third car would kick up to $120, and that fourth car would be $180. So you would pay probably about a total of $420 annually.
Okay.
So there is no cap when it comes to issuing permits per residence. It just gets more expensive if you want to store several of them in the right of way.
Absolutely. And that does make sense to me, in the sense of, space is commerce. I mean, those are expensive spaces to always have a car that can sit there. So it's like, you can either pay this or you can go rent out a garage someplace else. It might come out the same amount, but either way, space is at a premium. How does a resident get a permit?
Well, with this program, there are actually no physical permits tied to this. All the permits are maintained digitally.
Okay.
So to get a permit, a resident has to create an online account through our city site. An account creation requires proof of residency, credit card information, and vehicle information. And then once city staff reviews that account, for all the checks and balances, like, yep, this is a resident, credit card works, this is a motorized vehicle, then that account is approved, and then that resident is eligible to purchase permits on an as-need basis, and then they can control the start time for those permits as well.
Wow.
And since that account's already set up, that allows the permits to be approved automatically, so that you can accommodate permit needs outside of office hours. So if you have an unexpected party on the weekend and you need 10 guest passes on a Saturday, you can do that.
Wow,
Decide to get a new car on a Friday evening, you can get your permit set up to start on Monday. So all we need is just to have that account approved first, and then those permits are all maintained digitally.
I love that. So are there accommodations for low income?
Absolutely.
Great.
So individuals that require low income accommodations, annual permits, that first annual permit is free of cost, but then that price structure will kick in with each additional vehicle after that.
Okay. So we have a video that we're going to show after you answer this question. So how is a residential parking zone enforced? That's what we want to find out.
Well, for residential parking zones, in those areas, individuals who park in a zone that don't have a valid permit that are exceeding that 2-hour time limitation, they may be subject to receiving a citation.
Okay.
And rather than chalking vehicles, like how you see our downtown system works, our enforcement staff uses a license plate recognition system to enforce those vehicles on a regular proactive basis. So these are vehicles that have cameras mounted on top that drive through and take pictures of license plates. And since all of our permits are maintained online digitally, that system tells the officer whether or not they have a permit tied to that plate. And then when the system comes across a plate that doesn't have a permit, then it prompts the officer to investigate further into that situation, and they potentially could issue a citation.
Wow, this is very well thought out, I have to say. I mean, my goodness. So what's the application process like for a residential parking zone? I mean, just walk us through like it's you getting it. Okay.
Yes, so for a neighborhood to get a residential parking zone, this isn't something that we implement. We don't go knocking on doors asking, hey, do you want this zone?
Yeah.
It has to be initiated from the neighborhood first.
Okay.
So a neighborhood, if they are interested in having a residential parking zone, because they are the experts, they live and breathe that area, they know what that problem is and what might fit. They have to fill out an application, and then city staff reviews that application for requirements and eligibility. Staff would look at the underlining land use zoning, and that kind of determines what size an RPZ has to be. And then also look at other requirements such as, is this a designated pedestrian corridor? What's going on around it? Is there a large construction project? And once that application has the stamp of approval, it's like, yep, it's eligible. This is a good area to move forward for consideration. We do a petition period where we ask that property owners demonstrate that majority do support a residential parking zone being put in. If majority say nope, they don't want it.
Being those in the neighborhood?
Yeah. If majority of property owners come back saying no, they don't want it, then RPZ is not put in. If the results conclude that the property owners do support it, then we move further. We do a parking study to determine if that occupancy of that on-street occupancy level and that influence from an outside source meets the threshold for what we consider a parking problem, then we say, yep, this is a parking problem, would be a great tool, and then we move to implementation, installation, and we start enforcing. So altogether, the whole application process can take about 4 to 6 months. From experience, it's usually the petition period, the neighborhood gathering signatures amongst themselves. That's what can take the longest.
Okay. Wow, that is a wonderful explanation. And 4 to 6 months, given all those steps, is not long at all. So I want to say, Rachel, thank you so much for being here today and taking time out of your obviously very busy schedule, because we're launching this or adding more to it. I would love to have you back in 90 days. And I want to talk about 90 days, how the program's going, how we're measuring successes, all of that, what you've learned. Deal?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, whack for just a little bit of musical chairs. We will have here in this studio Recycling Revamp. You don't want to miss that. We'll be right back.